That's the topic of our briefing. I invite head of Mr. Ihor Koliushko, Reanimation package of reforms expert, chairman of the Center of Political and Legal Reforms. Viktor Musiyaka is not coming, but in 5 minutes there will be one more speaker, expert of LPI, Yuriy Hanushchak, head of the Institute of Development of Territories. Ihor, the floor is yours. Thank you. Good morning. Information cause for this meeting is an effort to consider in the Parliament the draft law brought in by the President of Ukraine on amendments to the Constitution of Ukraine in Ukraine as to immunity of MPs and judges. Despite the fact that last year, the whole 2014, all experts and politicians in Ukraine spoke about the necessity to adopt in Ukraine quite a to run quite a big reform, large-scale reform of constitutional reform. Now that the President nor the Parliament of Ukraine, new Parliament of Ukraine, they have not done anything to implement those promises, those obligations, those commitments. The only thing they did, they copied again in the coalition agreement, they copied a commitment to set up a special ad hoc commission and to prepare the draft law of amendments to the Parliament and to the Constitution and bring it to the Parliament. Nevertheless, until now, it's almost 2 months, or 2 months have passed since that time, and we see that neither ad hoc commission or that committee, which was required by the community, by IPR, we demanded them to set up not an ad hoc committee among all deputies, but to set up a constitutional committee headed by the President of the Parliament, by the Speaker, by the President and the Speaker of the Parliament, and it must include independent experts and scientists. But there should be also all political actors, all political forces in the Parliament, and representatives from the administration of the President, and they have not done that. We sent the draft regulation of the Parliament. We gave directly to the Speaker of the Parliament, Roisman. We sent to the administration of the President a draft decrees of the President about such a committee. Nevertheless, they done nothing, and no explanation from politicians why they are not doing that. At the same time, the President sends to the Parliament a draft law on amendments to the Constitution and also to immunity of MPs. What do we see in that draft law? Part 1 and Part 3, Article 90, they suggested to delete those spots. It means, I will read that for you to have a clear idea about Article 80, Part 1. MPs are guaranteed with immunity. That's a general declaration which is interpreted in other parts of this article. And an interpretation is in Part 2 and Part 3. That's why, preserving the second part, it's not clear why. Why do we delete the first paragraph? From a legal point of view. But also, it's even stranger with the third paragraph. MPs of Ukraine cannot be, without the agreement of the Parliament, brought to criminal responsibility, arrested, or detained. Yes. For many years, many times, many experts in Ukraine from NGOs, from science, told that this part of Article 80 of the Constitution gives MPs of Ukraine too much of protection, excessive immunity. We should narrow it in the frame of the constitutional reform. And almost everybody agrees with that, at least the majority of experts. But I never heard from serious scientists or experts proposals to delete that part. What does it mean? It means that MPs, they lose any immunity from interfering into the activity. At any moment, they can be arrested, detained, under any cause, just to find out who they are, just to get their ID, or for some other reasons. It means that an MP walking on the road to the parliament where he's expected for an important vote, he can be detained for 72 hours, according to the Constitution, just to clarify who he is, for example, or for some other reasons. Neither me nor anyone else. I spoke to a group of RPR day before yesterday, and we spoke about the constitutional reform, and we discussed this issue. Nobody can give me an example where in Europe we have such a situation that members of the parliament have no immunity from interfering into their work from the side of police or law enforcement bodies. We can give different comments why they brought in this draft law. The president accuses them that that's an effort to build some authoritarian model of power, and the parliamentary system can be on the way of the president. In that, I don't think that the situation is so bad in our country, but at least I have an impression that this draft law shows that around the president or the president by himself, there are trends of cheap populism. That's what do people want to narrow the MP's immunity. Here we go. We bring the draft law. It was prepared during one night without any discussion with anyone, and we report to the public that we follow the will of the people. But reforms which will be prepared like that will not give anything good to our country. I am absolutely convinced in that. MPs' immunity should not be liquidated, but it should be narrowed. MPs, like all the citizens of Ukraine, must be prosecuted by the court and law enforcement bodies if they commit crimes, but without the decision of the parliament or decision of a court. No MP should be arrested or detained, because this is the line which creates opportunities for law enforcement bodies to interfere into the work of the parliament, of the legislative body of Ukraine. That's why, thank God, there were not enough of the votes in the parliament even to take it as for consideration and to send it to the Constitutional Court. They voted, they did what they did before. At a focus pocus, they decided to put it into on the agenda, but it doesn't mean anything, because draft laws from the president are considered to be of emergency, and they are put on the agenda. The second part of this draft law is about so-called immunity of judges. Article 129, it is suggested after paragraph 1, we should put one more paragraph, which says, bring judges to criminal responsibility is done on the general basis. Judges cannot be brought to legal responsibility for their work in case they approve, if they approve decisions which were meant to be orchestrated, and that's why Article.
And I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you before this about the changes proposed for Article 126 of the Constitution. The third part is suggested to say that the judge cannot be brought to responsibility without the consent of the High Council of Justice. And now this is without the consent of the parliament, and cannot be detained apart from when he is suspected of committing a serious crime. But the problem is, well, the first problem is I'm convinced that these are political manipulations. Try to constantly join in one draft law the solution of absolutely different problems, the immunity of judges and the immunity of MPs. The immunity of judges is a question for the court system reform, and this is where it should be solved. And all the politicians and the lawyers are in agreement that these changes should be prepared within this framework. And at the moment, the judges have the same volume of immunity as is suggested in these amendments, but now the parliament gives consent. So they suggest that the High Council of Justice should give such a consent, but this law does not reform the High Council of Justice. So we can imagine that everything that is dealt with in this draft law is conveyed to the High Council of Justice, which used to be governed by phone calls from the administration of the president or from other sources. So without changing anything in the setup and the work of the High Council of Justice, they want to convey to them the authority to give a consent for the arrest of a judge. So merging those two issues in one draft law does look as a means to talk about the reform, to meet the expectations of the citizens, and not to solve the problems that there are in the Constitution. Besides, of course, this is not in the draft law, but the MPs are also talking about the immunity of the president, which is a third problem and is not linked to the problem of the immunity of MPs or judges. So to sum up everything that I've been talking about, I'd like to call upon our authorities, the parliament and the president, not to go in for cheap populism, not to introduce such unbalanced and non-discussed draft laws, but to create a constitutional commission that would discuss and prepare draft amendments to the constitutions about the status of MPs, about the immunity of judges, and about the decentralization and the reform of the executive power, where we have a whole set of problems. This is the only approach that provides us with an opportunity to launch real reforms of the political system of Ukraine, of the court system of Ukraine, and of the administrative system of Ukraine. Any other use of the idea of the constitutional reform will only split our society, worsen the situation, and make us farther from the reform. Thank you. Any questions, colleagues? I have a question. what do you think? What is the reason for such a sabotage of obligations that the president and the parliament have? Well, it's hard for me to answer about the reasons for someone not doing anything. There may be different reasons. If there were objective reasons, like they want but they cannot do this, they would probably explain why they don't do it and who hinders them. Any explanations about the war in the country or about the economic crisis that preclude us from doing the constitutional reform, these are not the explanations, because this is these problems that necessitate the constitutional reform. And without amending the constitution, it will be very hard for us to solve issues in the east of Ukraine or in the economy of the country. I don't want to voice any hypothesis why our politicians would not want to conduct reforms. I think you should better ask them. Oh, there is another question. Several draft laws that were worked out on Bankova in the administration of the president have got a very bad mark from the Venetian Commission. Why, at the moment, they do not draft their laws transparently without public? They don't want to correct their mistakes. I mean, the workers of the administration of the president or Mr. Poroshenko himself. Well, I agree with the evaluation of the facts that the draft law on amendments to the Constitution was rather critically assessed by the Venetian Commission and some other initiatives that are being criticized at different levels as well. Why this is happening? I don't know. I think that today in Ukraine there are all necessary preconditions to solve these issues in a transparent and high-quality way, both in public milieu, in scientific institutions, in state bodies. There's enough qualified people. I meet dozens of people with whom I talk about these issues, and they agree. Okay, let's just announce that you have a political will. Set up the commission, and we will agree most of the issues within several weeks. Maybe not 100%, but we will agree and find a compromise to the tune of 50 or 60%, and this is going to be a serious step forward if such amendments will be introduced into the Constitution. But this hasn't been done for 2 months now, so ask them.
Що буде далі?
What will happen next? Last week, I heard in mass media comments, and you made reference to Yuriy Lutsenko, so to someone else. You quoted one of them. I'm afraid to be wrong. One of top politicians, they told that next week, so it means this week, they would set up a constitutional commission in the parliament, or temporarily special commission in the parliament, which would cooperate with the constitutional commission of the president. I don't understand what it is about, but the week is almost over. Maybe something happens tomorrow, because tomorrow will be the last day of this week. Neither the parliament nor president created anything. The day before yesterday, we had a constitutional commission, a constitutional commission. We started to work in March last year in such a format. And that group includes the most known professionals on constitutional issues, Koliushko, Musiyaka, a number of civic organizations, and I asked all of them, maybe anyone knows something. Maybe this is me who doesn't have information. And all of them told that none of them was contacted. Nobody of them was invited. So it means that they do something behind the curtains or they do nothing. So it's a question to the authorities. Thank you very much. If there is no question, thank you very much, Mr. Koliushko. Our next briefing will be at